In this episode of the How to Get on Reality TV podcast, we talk about if you're too young for casting and does it really matter. Welcome to the How to Get on Reality TV podcast with Dan Giesling, where I answer your reality TV casting questions once a week. Hey everyone, and Happy New Year, and I hope you guys are enjoying your 2016. I am enjoying my 2016 because this is the third time I'm recording this individual podcast. I've had some technical difficulties, but you guys don't need to know about that. Just sometimes you can't just help but laugh. Anyways, I hope in 2016 you guys are going to take action on actually putting yourself on reality TV. A lot of people have thought about it. A lot of people haven't taken action on it. People have been listening to the podcast for over a year and haven't create an audition video yet. Now is the time to take action. So if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, stop listening and go make your audition video. If you're new, welcome. You're going to learn something, and go listen to the other podcasts because it'll help you as well. We have a great question this week from Will. Before we get into that, I want to remind you guys that I wrote a guide. And if you're like, okay, Dan, I'm ready to start and create my audition video, where do I start? How do I begin? The guide will take you through that process really quickly and efficiently, so you're not wasting time. You're not wasting time figuring out what to say, what you should be wearing, how you should set up your audition video, what stories you're supposed to tell, what's your character. It answers all those questions for you in a really succinct format. There's worksheets that comes with it. It makes it a really easy process for you. With outside of that, there's really not a whole lot of information. If you apply for reality TV shows, it says, hey, send in a video. Cool. Thanks for the information. The guide will help you out more. Check it out at how to get on realitytv.net/guide. It shows you how to access it there. It's really straightforward, and it's going to help you. It's helped a lot of other people be more successful in casting. You can check that out by going to howtogetonrealitytv.net/guide. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into our first question of 2016 from Will.
Hey Dan, you recently had an episode of the podcast where you addressed whether or not age matters in casting. You gave some really good advice to an older applicant regarding how to use his unique life experiences and his age to his advantage in the casting process. I want to take a look at the other side of the spectrum as someone who is very young and is planning on applying for Big Brother. Most of the 21 or 22-year-old guys that I see get cast tend to embody the young and immature stereotype. However, I consider myself to be mature for my age, so it would be hard for me to pretend to be like that when I'm just not that kind of person. What kind of disadvantages would you say that someone such as myself faces while trying to get cast? Will casting look down upon me for not having as much life experience as someone in, say, their mid or late 20s? Also, I know that you applied for Big Brother at the minimum age requirement. Did you ever run into anyone from casting that brought up your young age as a concern? Do you feel that your young age was an advantage, a disadvantage, or a non-factor in the casting process? Thanks, Dan.
All right, first and foremost, Will, I want to thank you for submitting your question to the podcast and going through the website, because it's people like you, Will, that make this show go forward. There's no show unless there's great questions like yours to answer. And also, I want to give you another shout out, a special shout out, because you referenced a previous podcast. Will talked about, we answered the question, does age matter in casting, and took the kind of older perspective to it in episode 48. So if you're maybe an older listener and you still want to get on reality TV, I would encourage you to check out episode 48 of the podcast at howtogetonrealitytv.net/episode 48, because we put more of a focus on the elder participant or the elder person applying for reality TV and how to use that life experience in your casting story. Well, that's not what Will wants to know. Will wants to know, hey, I'm 21. And, typically 21-year-olds on reality TV or whatever the minimum age is, and maybe 18 for the show. Typically, those people are on reality TV and are very, very immature because they're young. It makes sense. They do a lot of dumb things, and they kind of play into that immature stereotype. So here's Will, who's 21, that isn't that mature stereotype. So Will wants to know, how does that affect him, and is it a disadvantage? And Will, what you need to know is that there is that young role that needs to be filled in these casting pools and these casting, in these casts for these different reality TV shows. And there's that young role that needs to be filled by someone immature. Well, you don't fill that role, and that's really important. You kind of have uncovered and discovered a casting secret on your own, which is, hey, I'm not going to act a certain way if I'm not that way. That's really important, because you'd mentioned, I think almost directly, you're like, hey, I don't want to pretend to be immature because I'm not. So that's really going to help you, and it's an advantage to you because you don't fit that role. You're gonna come in looking one way, as a 21-year-old, and they're not going to expect you to have any life experience. You're going to be like, hey, look, I'm not like that at all. I'm very different from all these other 21-year-olds, and here's why. And that's the most important thing, is because you're younger, you need to do a great job telling a lot of stories that show how you are mature and how you're not immature. One of the things, Will, you have to do, absolutely have to do, is there's a reason you're 21 and you're mature. What is that reason? What was that turning point in your life? Whether it was a tragedy, something really good that happened, something really bad that happened. But at some point, somewhere in your life, you were catalyzed to make that decision to grow up quickly. Whether it was made for you or you made that decision. But that's like your origin story. That's going to be a really, really important thing for you to talk about in the casting process, because that's going to give a lot of insight to who you are, and more importantly, why they can believe that you are such a mature individual. So that's really important. If you don't know what that is, I'd spend a lot of time figuring that out, and more importantly, and also how you're going to convey that, in your audition video and in the later steps in casting. That's really, really important. The other question Will had said, hey, Dan, I know you had applied for reality TV at the minimum age. The second I turned 21, I applied for Survivor, and he wanted to know, hey, did that affect me? Was it a negative, the fact that I applied so young? So I applied to Survivor and got invited to semifinals, and you guys know the story. But the reason I got denied to Survivor, that they told me, the casting director was Sarah, she said, hey, you don't have enough life experience. And when a casting director or casting associate tells you don't have enough life experience, they're really telling you don't have enough of a story, or you haven't convinced us enough there's enough interesting things about you. It's not that you don't have any life experience, it's just you don't understand how to convey your character and convey who you are to them in a believable fashion, so they know there's some depth to you. So I got rejected for Survivor after semifinals, and 3 months later, when I was 21, I went through the same process in Big Brother. And ironically enough, the outcome was different. So I went through the same process and everything, and went through the audition process and thought I did well. And they called me back and said, hey, come to finals. They didn't say, hey, you don't have any life experience. But only 3 months had passed. I was 3 months older, but I didn't go from like 21 to 27. I didn't gain this insane amount of life experience in those 3 months. What I did do was gain casting experience. So sitting in front of a camera and a casting associate and in a big light, the first time was pretty daunting. It's kind of weird. You got to get used to it. But after I'd done it once, I wasn't thinking about that when I got to the semifinals for another show. And it's different now. They don't do that as much anymore. A lot of it is Skype interviews. The semifinals happen as Skype interviews right after an open casting call, so they don't have to waste their travel budget, yada, yada, yada. Their belts have gotten tightened in casting. So what that means is life experience and age really has nothing to do with it. It's all about understanding yourself and sharing stories, and more importantly, sharing stories that convey that you're not just this young kid that doesn't know what's going on in life. So that's really important. So Will, I hope that helps to answer your question, and I hope you take the advice seriously in terms of defining your origin story and really being able to talk about why you're different than most people, what caused you to be different, because that's going to be a really big key to you moving on to the next round in casting. So Will, as a small thank you, we're going to send you a free digital copy of my story, How a Normal Guy Got Cast on Reality TV. And if you want your question answered like Will on the podcast, go to howtogetonrealitytv.net/ask. And one of the things I want to do different here in 2016 is I want more people to submit their casting stories through that website so that we can break down more casting stories here on the podcast. If you're worried about your name and your story and not being anonymous, change your name and change where you're from, but still pitch the same story so I can help break that down and everyone else can learn from it in terms of drawing out the most interesting things and you practicing actually pitching your story. It'll really help both you and the other people in the community learn from that. So in addition to answering your reality TV questions, I want you guys to submit more of your casting stories so we can break those down in at least one case study a month. So if you want to submit your case study or your question, go to howtogetonrealitytv.net/ask, because I want to do more of those in the upcoming year. All right, so that wraps up the first podcast of 2016. Thank you guys so much for watching, whether this is your first episode or you've been listening since the beginning. Thank you guys so much. I do want to encourage you guys to take action. Don't wait any longer. Use this week and this weekend to create your audition video, because the deadlines are coming up. Put yourself in a position to be successful and get yourself out there. If you're not sure where to start, start with the guide. The guide will handhold you from everything from creating your story to understanding the process to drawing out your life experiences, and matching them to your character and how to define your character. With the guide, there's worksheets that walks you through everything. You'll be able to knock it out in a few hours and be done with your audition video and submit it and be ready to go. And that's a good feeling when you've got it out there, and then you're in a position to be successful. Then at least you have an opportunity to get cast. So you can check that out by going to howtogetonrealitytv.net/guide. All the information is there on how to access it at howtogetonrealitytv.net/guide. So that being said, I will see you guys next Monday, and I'm pretty sure we have a special guest interview lined up that I think you guys are really going to enjoy for next week's podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening, and have a great 2016.